So for yesterday, we did this SUMIF and COUNTIF, right? So that was what we treated yesterday, SUMIF and COUNTIF. So we're able to see how we could summarize data by using these two functions, the SUMIF and the COUNTIF functions. So for those of us that were not here yesterday, you can actually make reference to the video, all right, since it's already online. So we also did this using the SUMIF function to find the total number of goals scored by each club. Then I gave you a task, which you did. So the task was to complete this using the COUNTIF function and to complete this using the SUMIF function. So in order, just for revision's sake, to complete this using the COUNTIF function, you start with what? Equal to COUNTIF. So you start typing COUNTIF, and it should bring you up to this. The range is what? Where the criteria is under what? Quotes. That is under the products column. So select the range, comma. So my criteria is this, and I close it up and I hit what? Enter. So it counts it for me. So I go ahead to do that for the second guy, all right? So equal to COUNTIF, select your range, which is white under colors, comma, then the criteria is what? White. Close it up and hit what? Enter. Okay. Then for blue, equal to COUNTIF. So can you mute your screen? Can you mute your audio? Mute your audio, please. Disturbing us. All right, so you hit what? COUNTIF. Select the range for colors, comma. Then the criteria is what? Blue. Okay. So the same yesterday, we actually saw how we could also use the COUNTIF function, or another way of arriving at our answer, by typing in the criteria but including it in speech marks, since Excel does not just understand normal letters except when included in speech marks. So we go ahead to look at SUMIF. So SUMIF function, to just complete this, you start your SUMIF function by typing it in SUMIF, all right? So select it, then the range is what? Where your criteria is met, so under the client column, comma, then the criteria is actually what? Met. So I'm selecting this criteria because it's of the same spelling with what we have on our screen. Okay, then comma, then the sum range is how many units were sold. So under the unit section, you select the sum range. So you close it up and hit what? Enter. So Smith sold 27, Jones sold what? 31. Is that okay? So please, can you type yes if this was what we did yesterday, and if you actually understand what we are doing now? Just type yes. All right. So still waiting for us. Okay, yes. Who's the other person that is online? You sure? Are you there? Can you respond before we continue? Okay, so we move on. So this task here, we actually did this completely. Then this one, okay, let me just clear this. This one has already been done. So it says, all right, SUMIF function into cell D18 and D19 to total up the accumulative ages of males and females. So the way to do this is equal to SUMIF, right? So the criteria here is what? Males. So the range for males is this. Okay. So comma. Then the criteria is what? Males. Comma. Then the sum range is going to be this numerical data. So after you are through, you close it up and hit what? Enter. So that is the sum total of all the students that are what? Males. Okay, that is 220. So for females, the same thing goes SUMIF. So these functions are actually very simple to implement. You enjoy using it if you are working with larger data sets, because they just like some few rows of data, right? It's looking so easy. You'll be like, can't I just punch this with my calculator? So the range is this, comma, the criteria is female, comma, then the sum range is this. So close up your bracket and hit enter, right? So, and that gives you that. Now we go to our business for today, which is COUNTIFS. Is that okay? COUNTIFS. So COUNTIFS, we'll be looking at COUNTIFS, SUMIFS, and if function, right? So for COUNTIFS, it actually counts if, but in this case, there are several criteria, okay? It is COUNTIF with several criteria, right? So the question here says what? Or what we're asked to do here says what? Find out the number of times that Jones and Coates appear on the table, right? So you want to find the number of times that Jones appear on the table as well as Coates appear on the table, right? But in this case, is actually going to find where Jones and Coates appears. So you just start your formula here. Please, if you are lost at any instant, just call my attention. All right, so COUNTIF, COUNTIFS, all right, that is the last option here while typing COUNTIFS. All right, so the criteria range one is what? The first criteria here is what? Jones. So my criteria range one will be under the client section, okay? So my criteria one is what? Jones. So I'm going to type in Jones just as seen on my table. So I start with what? Speech marks. All right. Then I type in Jones, capital J-O-N-E-S. Then I close it up. So that's my criteria one. Then comma. Then I have criteria range two, which is what? Quotes. So quotes is under the product section. So I select the quotes range, comma. Then criteria range, the criteria two is what? Quotes. So I type in speech marks, then I enter what? Quotes. Okay, make sure you include the S, then close it up. So if there are several more criteria, you can include it here. Is all right. So there can also be more criteria. Maybe you're also counting with colors. Is okay. So, but here we just have two criteria, and it satisfies what we actually want to learn. Then we close it up and you hit what? Enter. Okay. Now look at what's happening. It has counted not just Jones, but where Jones and Coates appear on the same line, which is what? 3 places. Does that make sense? Okay. Not just counted Jones and Coates, but where Jones and Coates appear on the same line. So that is what COUNTIFS does for us. Now, supposing we now include another criteria, maybe white. So it only counts where Jones, Coates, and White appear on the same line. That will eventually give us 2 as a result. Hope that makes sense. Okay, the more criteria you have, the more likely that your outcome or your result is less, because it will be as if you are like the intersection where they intersect. Okay, so if it is understood, please type yes before we continue. It's actually very easy. So let me know if you are following. Just type yes or following. Okay, a little confused. Okay. All right. Joshua, you are a little bit confused. What is the challenge?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Based on our yesterday training, sir. Based on our yesterday training, I thought when you put the equal to and you highlight, you just highlight the column, either C, D, or E, then you press enter. But like what you're doing now, like you need to like highlight each. I don't really know. Is that
okay?
I'm a bit confused.
When you say highlight, okay, like let's look at this formula now. What were you expecting us to do so that probably I'll know how to tackle the question?
Okay, like Mr. Jones now.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
We're talking of Mr. Jones and Hart.
And
okay,
quotes.
I thought, yeah, okay, yes, sir, Mr. Jones and quote.
Yes.
Okay, you highlight C where Mr. Jones is, then you highlight D where there are quotes. That was my conclusion. Then you like after you highlight, then it's going to pick Mr. Jones based on C, then quote from D. Then when you press enter, then everything will just impute. You just impute everything directly. That's the figures and everything. But like you highlight Mr. Jones, then you go to the quote, you still highlight quote. I don't know.
Okay. Now, first of all, I want us to understand that, remember we are following I told us that each of the functions have a syntax. A syntax is like the pattern that you must follow. Okay. If it says after a particular argument has been,
you need to put equal to,
like after a particular argument has been accomplished, you add a comma. All right. So if you add something else after that particular argument, then it will bounce back with an error. Is that okay? Now, we entered COUNTIF quite all right. Is that okay? Now the question says what? Find out the number of times that Jones and quotes appear on the table.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, you can see my screen. Fantastic. So we want to use COUNTIFS function to find out the number of times that Jones and quotes appear on our table. Is that okay? So remember, we are using this to probably understand how COUNTIFs work. In real life, we'll be working with way more data than this. Okay. So to start the COUNTIFs, definitely we'll start off with what's equal to, then enter COUNTIFs. Okay. So you type it completely, or while you are typing it, these other options comes up. So you look for the one that is COUNTIFs, which in this case is the last one here, then you select it. So the criteria range one, remember they say what Jones and what quotes. So if Jones is the one that I want to start up with, then I complete it before going to what quotes. All right. So if it quotes is what I want to start up with, then I complete it before I go to what Jones. So what makes the difference is if you are starting with Jones, make sure you select the corresponding criteria range. Okay, so the criteria range one for Jones is this under clients. Okay, all right. So it's this range under clients. What differentiates COUNTIFs with count, the COUNTIF function, is for the COUNTIFs, that is the COUNTIF with an S, is that you have several criteria range and you have several criteria. All right. But for the normal COUNTIF, you just have one criteria range and one criteria. Very simple. So you select the criteria range, then you now hit your what? Comma. Why are we hitting comma? Because we are trying to follow the syntax. The syntax says what? After the criteria range one, you enter comma. Then to now, this one bold is the one where we want to enter next. All right. So yesterday, we found out that we could just select a particular cell. Supposing Jones is here and the Jones here is actually the same with what we have here. We'll have just, hit our mouse here and select Jones in whatever particular cell it is. But we don't have anywhere where Jones is recorded for us to select. So we have to type in the Jones within the speech mark, right? And it has to be exactly as it is on the table. All right, so after typing in your Jones, you close up the speech marks and hit on what? Comma. Then the next criteria that we're going to input is what? Criteria range 2. So the criteria range 2 is going to be found where quotes is, and quotes is under the product what? Section. So I select my criteria range 2, right? Then comma. Then my criteria now will be what? Quotes. So I'm going to type in what? Quotes in speech marks, right? Quotes. Okay. So where you see capital letter, type capital letter just as it is on the table. So I will have hit comma to go to criteria range 3, but there's no third criteria as far as this question is concerned. All right. So I'll remove my comma and close up the brackets, because I've completed my COUNTIF function, COUNTIFS function as far as this question is concerned. Then I hit what? Enter. All right. So what I actually highlighted these guys in yellow is I was trying to explain what the COUNTIFS is trying to do in this instance. Okay. It's trying to find out where Jones and quotes appear at the same line. Is that okay? All right. So you can also use it, supposing in a class or in an office environment. They are trying to tell you, okay, find out the places where a particular staff appears, and that particular staff is a senior staff. Okay, so you can use COUNTIF function. Definitely there will be several junior staff, there will be several senior staff, right? So you can use the COUNTIF function in those cases to just count, right? So eventually, if you are summing up maybe the total pay for the staff or something like that, you now use SUMIF, right? So, but let me know if what I've just explained is understood, so that I'll just go ahead to do for this second one. Just type understood or clear or yes, so that I just know. Then if there's any question, we can tackle it before we go ahead. Okay, all right. So don't worry, even though this video will still be made available online, okay? So for some of us that might not have a total grasp of what we're talking about. So for the second one, it says what? Find out the number of times that hearts and blue color appear on the table, okay? So hearts is under the products column and blue color, all right? So just like we seen before now, so I'm just going to remove all these colors. No fill, no fill. Yeah, this no fill. You start your COUNTIF function, COUNTIFs function. So COUNTIFs, so you select that. Okay, so the criteria range 1 is what? Hearts. Okay, so remember we're working with what? Hearts and blue color. So where is hearts? Under the product column. So I select this particular range. Okay, please make sure when you're selecting it, you don't cross over to this other guy. Right? Make sure you select only this as it is here. So comma, then the criteria is what? Hearts. So I'm going to type in my hearts in speech mark. So hearts, then I type it exactly as it is. So it's not just hearts, but what? Hearts with an S. So after you completed that, you hit what? Comma. Then the criteria range 2 is what? Blue color, all right? But what you have here is what? Blue. So don't go and type blue color. So just type blue as it is. But where is blue as a color is in this particular column. So I select the column, all right? So once I select it, I hit what? Comma. Yesterday, I was telling us that we could just type maybe from E4 to what? E16, but typing it will be so time consuming. So why not, since you have a mouse, you can just select the first cell, then drag it to where you want to stop eventually. All right, so having done that, what is the criteria for that range is what? Blue. So include it in speech marks, then you can now close it up. So since those are the two criteria that I want to satisfy, I'll just close up my bracket, then hit what? Enter. Right? So funny enough, it's what? 3. But just like we understood before now, hearts and blue color are actually coming up 3 times together on the same line. 1, 2, 3. Is there any other place I see hearts and blue color? No. Right? Is that okay? Now, because you have these 2 criteria, you can also do it the other way around, so that this first guy comes first before this other one. It will still give you the same answer. Just make sure that when you are working with blue, you are selecting the criteria range under what? The right place. Okay. So is this clear? Is this clear? I think Zainab is joining us for the first time. Is that so? Another count if for us to do. Maybe I should just do this one, then you guys can do the rest. How about that? So this one is more interesting. Yeah, this one is more interesting. Okay, so this like a typical real world example, although here we just have 150 rows of data. So this table is trying to tell us that we have like a shipment mode, customer name, segment, state, region, subcategory, sales. Sorry, I couldn't use something that is more identical to us here in Nigeria. So I just had to get this from somewhere, and it happens to be the US, right? So having said that, the task is to find out the number of times that consumers appear in the state of what? Kentucky. The number of times that consumers appear in the state of what? California. The number of times that consumers appear in the state of what? Florida, right? So from our previous knowledge, you notice that what? Consumer to some certain extent is kind of what? Constant, because consumer appearing in Kentucky, consumer appearing in California, consumer appearing in what? In where? Florida. Okay, so how do we tackle a case like this or cases like this? You use what? COUNTIFs. All right, so I will have just typed maybe the question or the scenario so that we can just go through it. But that's actually what we expected to do. So let's just go through it before our time goes up. So equal to COUNTIFs. So before I complete my COUNTIFs, the criteria in this case is what? These 2 guys. All right. So if I'm finding how many times consumer appears in Kentucky, the criteria will be what? Consumer and what? Kentucky. If I'm finding how many times consumer appear in what? California, that is here, the criteria will be what? Consumer and what? California. Now let's just look at the table and just analyze it briefly. So we have the state, right? So for this state, we have the state appearing several times on this table. Then we have segments. So for segments, we have either it is consumer, it is home office, or it is what? Corporate. Is that right? So want to find out how many times consumer as a segment is appearing or comes up in the state of what? Kentucky. So we want to find out how many times consumer in Kentucky appears on this table. Remember, this is what? Data summary. But unlike COUNTIF, the max, mean, and order, this is advanced data summary. Is that right? So you now go ahead to input your function. So COUNTIFs. Okay. So COUNTIFs, all right? Now, the criteria range 1 is what? Kentucky. Sorry, the criteria 1 is what? Kentucky. Now, the criteria range 1 will be where the column where Kentucky is, which is the state's column. Does that make sense? So I select this particular guy. Another faster way of dragging it to the last. So guys, I don't know, my internet is just fluctuating, but I think it's back now. So I was trying to select the criteria range 1. All right. So I instead of just dragging down like this, like we used to. So supposing you have 500 of these items. So dragging down will actually waste our time. So what you just need to do is use a keyboard shortcut. Okay. Just select the first cell where you want to start dragging down. Hold down Control, hold down Shift, then your down arrow key on your keyboard. Right? Hold down Control, hold down Shift, then press the down arrow key. That is that arrow key that is pointing down on your keyboard. Then it will select the whole item there for you. So if you, as you can see, you have from G2 to G150. Does that make sense? Okay. So from G2 to G150. So you hit comma. So the things as you go advanced, will be exploring or unraveling more shortcut that you can use. Right? If I would have told you this before now, you wouldn't have seen the importance. But now you can see how important it is. So having done that, you now hit what? The criteria in this case now is what? Kentucky. So I think this was what Joshua was asking for. Then Kentucky is exactly the same spelling as it is here. So we can just select it or type it, but include it in speech marks. But since we are selecting it, there's no need of adding it in speech marks. So hit what? Comma. Now the criteria range 2 is this particular column where you have what? Consumer, because consumer is here. All right. So the criteria range 2, we select where our criteria begins, hold down Control, hold down Shift, then hit the down arrow key on your keyboard, and it should do the selection for you automatically. So once you've done the selection, you hit what? Comma. Then the criteria in this case is what? Consumer. Now this consumer, is it the same spelling as what we have on the table? As far as capital letters and small letters is concerned, yes. If you doubt whether it is the same, you can still type it, but include it in speech marks. So we select this, and you hit what? You close up your bracket and hit what? Enter. And it should show you what? 2. Okay. So is it actually 2 where consumer and Kentucky actually appear? Let us just verify our answer by manually looking at it. So this is the first one, okay? Consumer and Kentucky. This is the second one, right? We have consumer, but it's appearing in Florida, consumer Florida, consumer California. So I guess that is exactly what it is. So can you imagine the time it's taking us to manually look at this just to see if we are correct? Imagine that is what you have to do for each of every consumer and every state that you have there. So you might spend the whole day looking for all the answers, but Excel formula and functions have made it easy for you to just find that it's appearing in 2 places. So let me know if this is understood. We'll actually do the others, but let me know if this is understood, or we should just do the next so that it becomes more clearer. So just chat or say something before we continue. Okay, a try once again. So I'm going to go through that, but with the second example. All right. I'm going to go through that for the second example. So count equal to COUNTIFs equals COUNTIFs. Okay. So our criteria range 1 is what? The column where California is. Then the criteria range 2 is the column where consumer is. All right. So for each of the criteria, All right, so we have to continue. Seems others are having challenge joining the class. So like we said, we want to count the number of times that consumers appears in the state of what? California. So the criteria here is to California and what? Consumers. So just like we saw in the first instance, you started off with what's equal to. So COUNTIFS because there are more than one criteria here. So California is in what column? Is in column what? G. So under what? State. So you select the first cell there to select, in order to select the criteria range, then hit your what? Control Shift and the down arrow key to select every other thing that is on that column. Then once selected, you hit what? Comma. So then you now go ahead to select the criteria itself, which in this case is what? California. So you can select the cell or you can type it in accordingly. Selecting the cell because the spelling is as it is on the table. Is all right? So having selected the cell, you hit what? Comma. Then you now go ahead to select the criteria range 2. So consumer is under the segment column. So I select the first cell, hold down Control, hold down Shift, then the down arrow key, then hit comma to go to the next argument. Then the next argument that you have to satisfy here is what? Criteria. So the criteria here is what? Consumer. Then you close it up and you hit what? Enter. So what this implies is that consumer and California appear on the same line in 27 places. All right. So if you want to check that out manually, so I think this is the first one, consumer and California. So if you keep on checking it like this, it appears on the same line in 27 places. That is this and this, okay, appearing together. So consumer and California, this alone is about 8 records or something. Okay, now doing it one at a time until we get to this last place can be time consuming. So we are going to make use of what we've learned before now, which is what? Absolute cell referencing. But the guy that is constant here is what? Consumer. So what you just need to do in this first formula, just reference O2 absolutely so that you can now replicate down the group. Just like we mentioned before now, to add your $sign in front of O and in front of 2, you just hit F4 or function F4, right? So we saw how we could actually reference these cells absolutely in our beginner class. That was the first class we held. You can watch the video if you don't know how to. Either you press your F4 key after you selected your O2 or you input it manually by moving your cursor to the appropriate places and entering the $sign. The $sign can be entered by holding down Shift and pressing the number 4 key, all right? Or wherever the $sign is, you press it down. So once you release it, it won't change your answer. Your answer will still remain the same. So I'm going to clear voice in 27, all right, by hitting the delete key. So this is 2. So once I double click here, so I move my mouse to the bottom right corner of my cell. So once I double click, it should fill it up for me automatically. Or I can come here and drag down, all right? So you notice that it has started filling it up for me automatically. Is that okay? So let me just double click so that it fills it up, everything for me. Now, the essence of everything we are learning is very, very important. There's no small knowledge. There's no big knowledge in Excel. The slightest of the things you've learned can actually help you to speed up your work. All right, just imagine how absolute cell referencing O2 will actually make us to replicate the content of the cell down. All right. If you know everything and you don't know how to work smartly, it's of no use as knowing it at all in Excel, because it will still be as if you are working manually. Yes, we know how to use COUNTIFs, okay, but doing it one at a time will be time consuming. That's why we'll have to, reference this absolutely. Okay. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Okay. If you make mistakes, definitely you want to learn more, or that means you are actually doing something. So you are trying to figure out how to do something. So once you make mistake, you try to know how to do it. You can actually search it up online if there's nobody there to guide you, or you can call up on somebody that have done it before. All right. So having done this, I'll leave you to complete that for corporate and complete that for what? Home office. It's actually very easy, just what we've done before now. So for corporate, your criteria 1 will be this, and your criteria 2 will be this. Okay, your criteria range 1 will be, where is corporate now? Your criteria range 1 will still be the states column. Then your criteria range 2 will still be the segment column, right? For home office, like that, and you should get your answer without any challenge. Let me know if you understand before we go to the next, which is SUMIF, right? Just type understand or yes before we go to the next one. Time goes on. It's okay. So content on Excel, beginner class, tricks, tips, up to advanced level. So I hope to upload at least several contents within a week. All right. So like I said, you complete this using the COUNTIFS function. So go ahead to look at the SUMIFS function. All right. The SUMIFS function. Okay. So this is the same cell, this is the same table that we have. So we are asked to find the total sales per segment in each case, in each state. This total sales per segment in each state. The total sale per segment in each state. Okay? The total sale per segment in each state. So just like we saw before now, if you are using the SUMIF function, what you just need is only one criteria and one sum range. Okay, so but in this case, we have several criteria. So the first criteria is this, and the second criteria is this. Then the sum range is what? Sales. Okay, we want to find the total sale in each segment, the total sales per segment in each state. Okay, so just like we saw for COUNTIFs, where consumer and Kentucky appears together, what is the total sale? All right, if it's appearing 3 times, what is the sum of the total sales of each segment in each state? That's exactly what this SUMIFs will help us to do. What help us to know at this time. All right, so these sales can be in USD, it can be in Naira, but let us just format it to be in dollars. Is that okay? So formatting it to be in dollars, and we go ahead to use our SUMIFS function. So you start your SUMIFS function with equal to SUMIFS, all right, SUMIFS. So it comes up, all right. Now look at what the syntax look like. The sum range, the criteria range 1, the criteria, all right? So the sum range is always a numeric data, right? So you select this sales column, all right? Then you hold down your shifts, your control shifts, and your down key, all right? Then hit what? Comma to go to the next one. Okay, so since this is the first time we are actually doing this, it will look so new, but just follow me and it should become clearer when we do the second one. So the sum range remember I said what is always numeric data. That's why you don't see what sum range 1. So the criteria range 1 is what? Where Kentucky is. In this case, Kentucky is under the state what? Column. All right. So you select Kentucky and you hold down Shift, Control Shift, then your down arrow key. Okay. So one other thing is that this is an advanced class. So don't get so tensed, because this is actually what advanced users of Excel should be doing. It's all right. And it's actually very, very simple. Very, very simple. Okay. So I'm promising you that it can only get easier. So after you selected the criteria range 1, comma, then you now select the criteria. So the criteria in this case is what? Kentucky. All right. So this is the criteria in this case, which is what? Kentucky. Remember, I selected my criteria range 1 and I selected what? The criteria. So you now have what? Comma. Then the criteria range 2 is what column is your consumer in? Is the segment column. So I select the consumer, hold down Control Shift and your down arrow key. Remember, we've upgraded from selecting the first cell, then dragging down. Now we are using the keyboard shortcut, Control Shift and your down arrow key to select everything. Then you now hit what? Comma. Then we'll now go ahead to select our criteria, which is what? Consumer in this case. Then you now close up your guy and hit what? Enter. Okay. So to interpret this invariably, what it's trying to tell you is that what? Where consumer and Kentucky appear on the same line, the total sale that was made is what? $993.9. So I'll just format this as currency. So just currency. Okay. So $903. So I want to clear off formatting here. Clear off formats. So I'm just going to format it as currency again. Okay, so $903. I should make it bold and bigger. Okay, so I will see it. Now, because consumer is constant, because we want to do for the second one, where the total number of sales made where consumer and California appears, the total number of sales made where Florida and consumer and Florida appears. All right. So let us just do the second one and see the answer before we now decide what to reference absolutely. So equal to SUMIFS, okay. All right, so the sum range is these sales. Supposing you want to calculate the total quantity sold in each segment under each state, you now use this, all right? But here we want to find the total sales, okay? It's just like translating English, okay? Translating the English language and implementing it into your formulas and functions. So you select the range. I just press down Control Shift and the down arrow key, and it selected all those for me. So having done that, I now go ahead to select my criteria range 1. So California is under the state segment. So under the states column, I beg your pardon. So select that, then hit comma. So my criteria 1 is what? California. All right, so I can type in California and close within speech mark, or I can select the cell. But I'm selecting the cell because the California is exactly the same as seen on the table. So I hit comma. So my criteria range 2 is where under what column is consumer in this table? It's under the segment column. So I select that, hitting down Control Shift and down arrow key, and that is selected. Then my criteria 2 will now be what? Consumer. Then I close it up, Shift, press your close brackets wherever it is, and hit what? Enter. So the total sale made here is what? 5,343. Is that okay? Point, whatever it's behind it. So you can decide to manually do all this one at a time, but it will be time consuming. I wouldn't want that to happen, or it will, our use of Excel will be defeated if we continue to do it manually like that. Okay, so what we just do is to reference this consumer absolutely, because it's constant. When you come eventually to start doing for this one, you have to reference this particular cell absolutely, so that you'll be able to get all this. Is that okay? Or so that you'll be able to replicate down this particular column. So I'll just reference this. I'll just select O2. Okay, make sure you select exactly O2 and nothing else. Don't come and select like this. Okay, here the closing bracket is selected, or don't come and select with the what is that? The comma. Okay, just make sure you select only O2. Then hit F4 on your keyboard. So it should add the $sign in the right places for you. Then hit enter. So with this, you can just double click at this end and it should give you your answer. So just double click and it should give you your answer. So if you notice, there are some places that that display what? 0. Okay, that means there are no places that Nebraska and consumer show on the same line. That is why there's no sales there, right? Just like also saw under COUNTIFS, there are some places that displays was 0. Okay, those some places you actually not have sales there, right? So, wow, hope I'm not too fast. Are we understanding? So if you're understanding, just type yes. Let me know if we're understanding before we continue. Yes, Maria said for one to know this, it will take one time by practicing. Yeah, you definitely need lots of practice. Okay, you need lots of solving practice question and tasks. Okay, I'm going to be making this file available to you, so you don't have to worry. What you also have to do is to go the extra mile, just find resources, okay, or just make sure you follow the videos, because I'll be also adding more videos to what we have now. These free classes that was actually organized is just a way of helping out people to have a grasp of what Excel is and what Excel can do, right? So you mustn't actually pay for everything. At least with this, you appreciate how Excel can help you to do a lot of things, even though we've not actually covered much. But what I just did is to pick out some topics under beginner level, some topics under intermediate levels, and some topics under advanced level. We look at it. There are a whole lot of topics that we've actually not treated. There is a VLOOKUP, there is the index match. In fact, we've not actually touched maybe nested ifs and all that. So this is just like a stepping stone for you guys. So in case we end this class today, just know that that's not the end. You already have my number. You can always reach out to me should you encounter any challenge. Remember, I told you that there's a gift at the end of this class. So I'm going to be dropping the details of that gift in the group, okay? So we have this. So with this done, you should be able to do for corporates for home office. So you have 2 tasks already, this one and this one. Is okay? So let us quickly look at the if function, which is very, very simple compared to, well, let's say it's very, very interesting. Okay. We have understanding the if function. So the if function is under the set of Excel functions, which is called logical functions. Okay, we have several logical functions, the if function, we have the and function, the or functions, okay, the nor functions. For some of us that are science students, at least in your physics, you should know that some of the gates that you have in physics is the and gate, the or gate, and all that. So Excel also has some of these functions, but the one that we'll be focusing on this in this class is the what? If function. It's a logical function, right? If rain is falling, what should you do? Go out with umbrella. if sun is shining, what should you do? Or if there's no rain, don't go out with umbrella, right? So the if function actually helps you to take a decision or to make something happen if a condition is true, or to make something not happen if a condition is what? False, all right? So in this case, we are looking at this simple scenario where we have who is involved is what? Wife. The behavior is what? Smile. And there's a what? A verdict or a return or the result that will happen when this behavior changes. So it says what? In cell C2, use a function to display happy if the behavior is what? Smile. Otherwise, display unhappy. So as far as this behavior is smile, it should display what? Happy. But anything other than smile, even if you add S to it, it should display what? Unhappy. All right. So in cell C3, use a function to display hungry if the behavior is crying. Otherwise, display what? Satisfied. All right. So Excel, to some extent, can also be likened with what? Programming. Because in programming, you have the conditional functions or the conditional loops and all the else, if, and all the while, right? So let me not bug us with that. Let us just concentrate on this. So the if function can be written using the what? The word what? If, okay? The Excel function if. So as you can see, it says what? Checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. So once selected, it now asks us the logical test. The logical test is such that the particular test that you want to check if that particular condition is what? I don't know why my internet is saying internet not stable. Please, can you still see my screen? Can you still see my screen? Please confirm. It's showing on my screen that my internet is not stable. Okay, all right. So we can continue. So the logical test is we want to check for this particular cell, this cell B, B2, if it displays what? If this word is equal to what? Smile, then it should display happy, else it should display unhappy. So if B2 is equal to smile, but smile, we have to include smile in speech marks, all right? Okay, so if B2 is equal to what? Smile. So open speech mark, then type smile as it is there. Okay, sorry. So type smile as it is there, then close up your speech marks, comma. So the value if true, they say it should display what? Happy, if it is true. So you now type your happy. So your happy should also be in speech marks. So happy, okay? So close your speech mark, sorry. So if it is anything else but smile, it should display what? Unhappy. So include your unhappy in speech marks also, all right? So there's no rule to what your value if true is or your value if false is, all right? You can decide what your value if true is or what your value if false is, right? So, but in this case, they are actually defining what our value if true is and what our value if false is. So having entered that, you now hit what? Close your bracket and hit what? Enter. So because this guy here is smile, our outcome shows what? Happy. Okay. So suppose we now make a mistake by adding S in front of the smile. Now look at what will happen. It will show what? Unhappy, because the condition is not met, because B2 is no longer equal to what? Smile, but what? Smiles, right? Does that make sense? It's actually very, very easy, okay? So that is the beauty about the if function. It's very, very easy to implement, very, very easy to implement, okay? So supposing I now put wife is running or run, right? Okay, so the verdict is what? Unhappy, because B2 is no longer equal to what? Smile. All right, so let us look at the second one, then I'll not ask you whether you understand or not. Okay, so for the second one, you start with what? Equal to if. Okay, so the logical test is if this cell, which is B3, is equal to what? In cell B3, in cell C3, use a function to display hungry if the behavior is crying. So if B3 is equal to crying, so I put my crying in speech mark. So make sure you type it exactly as it is, because it is case sensitive. So comma. So if B3 is equal to crying, comma, value if true should be what? It should display what? Hungry. Hungry, right? Comma. Then value if false should display what? Satisfied. That is otherwise. That is if it's not true, it should be what? Satisfied. So if it's not crying or anything other than crying, it should display what? Satisfied. Satisfied. Okay. Then once you've entered that within speech mark, you close it up and hit what? Enter. So because this child is crying, it shows what? Hungry. Now, if you make mistake to put what? Cry, okay? Because it will now show what? Satisfied. Why is it showing satisfied, even though it is the same cry? Because the condition is no longer satisfied. The logical test has failed, okay? So that is exactly how if function works. Now, I want you to write a comment if you are following, if you understand what is going on before we go to the next phase of the task. Okay, all right. So Suleiman following, Maria following. All right, so Bashir, I think Bashir is not available. All right, so we go to the next one, which is this. Okay, so in this table you have what? Budgeted. An amount has been budgeted by maybe an individual or government, or maybe a firm or an organization or a department, and there's an actual amount that they spent. All right, so 320 has been budgeted, but the actual amount that was spent is what? 368. Okay, here 150 has been budgeted, but they spent what? 129. All right, now it says what? In column C, this column, use a function to display over budget if actual budget spent is greater than the amount budgeted. That is, if this is greater than this, it should display what? Over budgeted. Else, it should display what? Within budget. That is, if this is not greater than this, it should display what? Within budget. All right. So we'll go ahead to do this quickly. So equal to if function, okay. So the logical test is if this is greater than, the greater than, you use what? This sign like this. If this is greater than this, okay. So for less than, you use this other sign. But in this case, we are looking for if the actual amount spent, which in this case is B2, is greater than what? The budgeted, which is what? A2. Okay, that's our logical test, comma. So the value if true is what? It should show what? Over budget. Over budget. Okay, so after you've imputed, you hit what? Close the speech marks, then hit what? Comma. Then the value if false, it should display what? Put it in speech mark, within budget. Within budget. All right, so after everything, close it up, close up the speech marks, then close up your brackets, then hit enter. Okay, now looking at it visually, you can see that the actual amount spent for this first guy is actually greater than this. That's why it's over budget. So instead of doing it one at a time, you can just replicate by double clicking here and you should notice that you are good to go. So for this, the actual amount spent is less than the amount budgeted, so it's within budget. This other one is within budget. This one is over budget. Okay, so I now begin to appreciate the if function and what it can do. All right, so it's very, very simple. Excel itself is very, very awesome. So sweet. Okay, all right, so the last but not the least. All right, so the last but not the least, it says what? Display yes if price is above 500. Otherwise, it should display what? No. Okay, this is what? Price. And this is where you should display yes or no. So above 500, just like equation. So yes or no. All right. Just like we saw before now, I'm just going to do the first one, then I'll allow you to do the other ones. So equal to if function. Okay. So the logical test is if A2 is greater than what? 500. Okay, that is like you are actually translating English to mathematical terms. Okay, so if A2 is greater than 500, it should display what? Yes. Okay, put your yes in speech marks. So yes. So I'm just going to type everything caps. Okay. So what if A2 is less than 500? That is otherwise. So if value is not true, then it should satisfy value if false. Otherwise, it should display what? No. Okay, so close it up, then close your bracket, then hit what? Enter. So A2 is actually greater than 500. That's why I'm saying yes here. So let me just format Painter. Sorry. Let me just format Painter, then paste it here. So it's big. Okay. So you can just drag down, So 911 is greater than 500. Yes. 74 is greater than 500. No. 312 is greater than 500. No. 970 is greater than 500. Yes. Okay. Now, as a way of modeling data, all right, you can just decide to just change this one to maybe 400. Then your answer will change. Okay. So this will eventually change to no because it's less than 500. Right. So remember, Excel can be used to model data for simulation and all that. Hope this is understood. And if you have any question, you can always direct it to the group. The group will still be open. The video will be uploaded on YouTube. Do well to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we hope to get our first 100 to 1,000 subscribers, even 10,000 subscribers, who knows? All right. So if you have any question, you can just let us know before we close for today. And that is the end of our free Excel class for KD. Subsequent ones will be coming, but definitely for new batches. Is that okay? I have less than 1 minute to go. All right. Okay, I understand this more than the COUNTIFS and the SUMIFS. Okay, that is interesting. All right. So our interaction will continue in the group. Okay. So our interaction will continue in the group. So I'm ending this now. Yeah, I remember your gifts. I'll be sharing that in the group also. So follow me up in the group. All right. So thank you all. I love you guys. Bye for now.